Good afternoon, dear students. Let's start our session. Now we're going to do Module 16, Network Security Fundamentals. We are doing CCNA-1, Introduction to Networks, and touching on network security, the importance of security in a network cannot be talked about enough, especially in today's era where we have got so many cases of intrusion and attacks, so much so that every country has got a defense force around network security and cybersecurity. And that's why cybersecurity has come into so much prominence in this day and age. So let's touch on this topic and try and understand why is it so important and how we as network engineers can protect our systems better. So we have to look at security threats and what are the vulnerabilities that we can suffer from. Okay, what should we take? What precautions should we take? Basic security precautions. And what are the different kinds of network attacks? We have to find out. How do we mitigate these attacks? What is the general mitigation techniques? And how we can have device security so that people cannot just access these devices online. Security is a very important subject, so much so that it has got its own field now. And it makes investment in security something very important. If you have been a network administrator, you would have experienced different kinds of attack on a network. Okay, the time you spend to configure your network. Now, just imagine somebody goes and destroys that network. Even on Packet Tracer, the time that you spend on configuring a network, even through a gateway. After that, somebody goes in and infects one of the machines. And since it's a network, okay, they send ICMP messages to each other. What happens if the whole network gets that software? And this has happened before. This is nothing new. There have been examples of software attacks in different networks. Okay, even people who have air gap, that means a secluded network, and think that their network is secure. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as security. Okay. You can have intruders that can come in. Okay. These intruders, they have a special name. We call them threat actors. Okay. They can either be sponsored by a country, a government, or they can be individually working alone, trying to prove a point, or working for an organization, or, they have got so many forums online where you can go and find out tips and tricks and loopholes. Okay, so threat actors are out to prove a point, okay, and to create havoc. And sometimes they are sponsored by countries or people with an agenda. So we don't have to go into the details, into the politics of it. We just have to ensure that our network is secure. The threat actor gains access to the network. So if they gain access to your network, they can do information theft. They don't want them to get information from your network. Okay, because information, this is the age of information. Knowledge economy is very important all around the world. So if they get info, okay, if they get the info, for example, if they can, hack into the Curtin database where all the research info is mentioned, okay, uh, what are the grants that has been granted, uh, what are the research that is being going on, who are the PhD applicants, what is their research questions. If they copy those and and create their own uh, uh, research question and lodge that before the applicant has lodged, then this is a serious theft. Okay, so you have to be very careful with your data loss and changing your data, manipulating your data. Okay, accessing your fees database, the fees that you give online, managing to access it, and changing the values inside, uh, going on, for example, Facebook and stealing somebody's identity, appearing as that person, and saying that, for example, this is my second account, and uh, getting information like that, disruption of major services, stopping key utilities in a network, all kinds of things. You must have watched some of these in movies, okay? And sometimes what they do, where they show in movies, is based on fact. Okay, they don't just create stuff. They have done, Hollywood also does its research very well. Okay, and they go beyond one step. They go and find out loopholes before anybody else does. Not exactly Hollywood, the authors who write fiction. Okay, so it's very important for us to sometimes watch um, certain documentaries and try to understand what is happening in the world. You'll be surprised that um, there is a lot of money being invested in looking for information on other people's domain and networks, okay, especially even in corporations, okay. uh, all those billionaires trying to find out, okay, they would like to know what is the next product of Microsoft, what is Amazon up to, okay, or trying to find out, for example, what is the next breakthrough um, by a space company, okay, trying to get information on that. So all these information is inside your computer infrastructure, and getting access to it um, by somebody who is a threat actor will compromise your network. So you have to take precautions. You have to take care that does not happen, and that is your responsibility as a network engineer. Okay, you have to know this, otherwise you will be held accountable. So there are three primary vulnerabilities if you look at weaknesses. The first one is technological vulnerabilities. Okay, uh, loopholes in TCP/IP, loopholes in the operating system and the network equipment. Okay, a few years ago, there were issues. Many countries were raising issues around usage of Huawei routers and Huawei switches. Okay. Uh, and many people have stopped investing in that. Okay. Because, there was a rumor that there was a black hole inside all these network equipment. That means somebody can have an access. There's a back door inside these, and the people, technicians from Huawei or engineers from Huawei can access it. So uh, we don't know whether that was true or not. Huawei denied this, but we don't know whether that is true or not. Uh, if you watch this documentary, Citizen 4, uh, the person, that's why it's very important for you to, be aware of all these things. If you watch this documentary, this is quite old. You have got Edward Snowden telling in that documentary that Cisco routers and Cisco equipment has got a back door inside them. Okay, so perhaps I'm not so sure how much all this is true, or maybe I have to go and back and watch that documentary again. So documentaries like this, they keep things. As a network engineer, you should know so many things about uh, the world around you, and especially with relating to networks. Okay, and where the weaknesses can be. Okay, it says over here itself there is some degree of vulnerability in your routers and switches, okay, and desktops, and your machine. So you have to patch those. Okay, um, you cannot just rest there. You have to always think, what should I do? You should have penetration testing to make sure that your network is safe. Okay. The other vulnerability that you can have is configuration vulnerabilities. Okay. Uh, Here, this is under your control. If you have got unsecured user accounts, system accounts with easily guessed passwords. That's why whenever you are the system administrator, if you are creating a policy, you have to make sure that the password is consisting of a character, a number, and perhaps a mixture of capital letters and lower letters. Okay, something which is not easily uh, guessed. Okay, and definitely not have a password called password. Okay, as sometimes people do. Do not allow that. As a system administrator in a network, you can enforce that kind of policy. Okay. So you have to ensure that these vulnerabilities are patched. And the third primary vulnerability is security policy vulnerabilities. If you don't have a proper security policy, you have to ensure that uh, a security policy is enforced on your network. If you have a Linux system or a Windows system, as an administrator, anyone who's accessing the server in your enterprise, you have to ensure that perhaps they don't have permission to install software on the computer. Or if they are accessing a website, that website should be filtered. It shouldn't be a suspect website, or it shouldn't be a website where you can, access something which is illegal. Um, we can also control uh, things like you don't want people to use websites, certain websites to communicate, to talk, to video, to use certain video software like WhatsApp or video and so on, because it will feed on your bandwidth, the network bandwidth, and slow down the network for others. So all these things, you should have a policy. Okay, you should ensure that this policy is applied to all the computers on your workstation. Okay, depending on the uh, CEO or the big boss, whatever they say, can you implement this? Can you? That's why the network administrator in an enterprise is one of the most powerful persons. Okay, and he takes his order right from the big man. Okay, the big man tells him to do this. I want you to do this. I want you to do this. Okay, find out who is accessing what on their computer, which websites are people going to, who's accessing Facebook during work time, who's watching videos, what videos on YouTube are they watching. Okay, so you'll be very surprised at what the network administrator can do. Okay, um, what kind of um, what kind of uh, software is running on the computer. Okay, all these things, network administrator using certain tools can easily find out. Okay, so you have to be even as a user when you are in an enterprise working as an employee, you have to be very careful because the network administrator can actually create a case against you if you have broken the rules. So you have to be very careful. Okay. As a network administrator, as a network engineer, you have to ensure this is updated always, security policy. Okay. So prevention is the best cure. Otherwise, it can leave a network or device open to various attacks, including malicious code attacks. If a person installs a software online, it's just testing, you will say, I was just testing it. And that software is actually having a bug that can actually spread around the network and infect the whole network. That's it. The whole network comes down. Okay. And we have got so many sophisticated software, and everybody is not IT savvy. People who get an email saying that, hey, if you click on this, you will win an award. Or if you click on this, this is your latest DHL delivery. Please click on this so you know where you can pick up your package from. When they click on it, that's it. It infects their PC, and then it sends a ping to other computers in the network, infecting all, and the network is down. So do not give installation permission. The moment they try to install, okay, that software on their computer, it says that, sorry, you're not allowed to install. So if it's important, they will call IT and they'll say, hey, can you come down and install this for me? When the IT technician comes in and says, this software is suspect, let me install it in my sandbox. Sandbox means in a place where I can test it so it doesn't affect the environment. And once they test and find it's something suspicious and harmful, then they will educate, or they will send out an email and tell everybody, if you get an email with this installation, do not uh, open it. Okay. And if you get any email that says open this or click this, never do that. Okay. Now we are savvy, but many people out there are not savvy to these things. Okay. They're very innocent and they become victim of, all these attacks. So network devices can be physically compromised. A threat actor, the person who's trying to gain access, can deny the use of the network resources. So these are the four classes of physical threats. It can be hardware threat. Yes. Doing a physical damage on your actual network equipments, your switches, your multi-layer switches, your routers. That is why if you go to any enterprise, you will see the intermediary devices are stored in certain rooms which have the highest security under lock and key. Okay? There are certain places that they store and they don't advertise where it is and what's going on over there. Okay? They ensure that only the IT personnel can access those rooms. Okay? That's what a smart network engineer should do. You have to ensure that you don't trust anybody. Okay, you should have that mentality. Okay, and ensure that it's always under lock and key. So much so that sometimes the network administrator does not even trust the technicians to go to that room. Okay, because those equipments are switched on. Okay, if you've got a switch rack and connected to multi-layered switch rack, you'd be ensuring that it's always on the lock and key. And if you want to do some updates or checks, you do it yourself. There can be environmental threats. Okay, temperature extremes. Remember what happened in Fukushima? There was a tidal wave that came in, and what happened to the network if there is a environmental attack. What happened in Fukushima was something very serious related to uh, nuclear accident. But just imagine if it's not even a nuclear accident, but an accident, any kind of environmental or natural calamity, earthquake, or perhaps tsunami, tidal wave. These can actually affect your network and bring down your network. And then this is all huge amounts of investment, huge amounts of financial assets, all can go to waste. Okay, so the place that you keep your equipment, your routers, your switches, you have to ensure that they are in a proper place. They have got proper air conditioning, not too wet, not too dry. Okay, and it has to be protected from the elements. What about electrical threats? Okay, voltage spikes, insufficient supply. If there is insufficient supply, then it becomes the power inside it will be so less. That's why they call it brownouts. Okay, if there is unconditioned power, there is EMP from another source, electromagnetic pulse from another source. If there is total power loss, if you're suddenly the power goes off, do you have an uninterrupted power supply for your server? Do you have it? Because you cannot simply switch it off. You have to make sure that students can access Moodle, students can from outside who have got power, or a student who is even not in Miri, somewhere else, and is trying to access Moodle doesn't suddenly uh, cannot access. So all these things you have to take into consideration. You should have a uninterrupted power supply that takes over for a few minutes until you try to uh, assess what is the damage. Okay, and maintenance threats. When you maintain, when you have to update, when you have to change, you have to ensure that the electrical components are properly handled. Okay, electrostatic discharge is something very normal with all these equipments that we have. Okay, even in the lab, we tell our students be careful. Okay, uh, you have to ensure that cabling is done properly. If you're giving the contract of cabling to an outsider, you have to ensure that they do a good job. Okay, and make sure that there is a proper labeling. Okay, the wire that comes into this switch, where is it coming from? Okay, and it's connected to which room? All those things. So you have to create a good blueprint. If you're doing it from scratch, you have to do a good blueprint. And if you're going to an enterprise and taking over as the network administrator, network engineer, you have to ask for the blueprint. And if all these things are missing, you have to start. This should be a part of your job to make sure that the network is up and running. Okay. So before you leave, you give them something uh, that is up to date and very difficult to hack, very difficult to break by a threat actor. Okay, so that is your like your baby, what you have created, and then you get a reputation. Wow, this network administrator, this guy is something different. Okay, and when you get a reputation, um, your fees, that means your salary, can be substantial. Now we go to network attacks. What are the kind of network attacks? You have to know about this as well. Software that harms a machine can actually be created anywhere. I can just sit down in front of my computer and just using 2 or 3 lines create a program which is going to, put down your computer, okay, and email it to anyone. Anyone can do that. Anyone with a simple knowledge of programming can do that. Okay, it's not a big deal. So the threat actor that who is coming out with all this suspect sometimes is not a sophisticated, person uh, who is sponsored by a country. No, sometimes it's just a person who is a teenager and who wants to prove a point and say, hey, I can do it. Why did he do it? Because I can do it. So you have to be savvy to this. Okay. So when you get these kind of software that brings down your network, we call them malware, which is a short for malicious software. The whole idea is to damage, disrupt, steal, or do something bad or illegitimate. Okay, what keystrokes is he typing on the keyboard? Okay, uh, what is there in his folders? Okay, steal the information from his folders. Okay, if we divide it, we have got viruses. Okay, and we have got viruses ever since the advent of computing, right from the early 80s. It's a software, a malware that, propagates by inserting a copy of itself and becoming part of another program. Okay, so it spreads from one computer to another computer, and it infects. So any machine, all you have to do is perhaps send it by email or put it inside a pen drive. Okay, so don't be in a habit of sharing pen drives. Or if your friend gives you the pen drive and says that can you just copy it, so you have to be careful with that pen drive when you put it on your computer. Okay, that could be an infection source, and that is one way to actually penetrate an air gap. Okay, when I say air gap, I mean a network which is not connected to the internet. Okay, so some people, what they do, they think that they're very smart and they say that, hey, let's create a network where we do not connect it to the internet. That way we can be secure. No, they don't understand that there's no such thing as security. You have got a computer has got a USB port, and people have got pen drives. Infect one of the pen drives and give it to one person and goes in, puts it inside the USB port. That's it. Goodbye to your air gap. Okay. uh, so you have to understand that viruses can come from anywhere. Okay. Another one that we have is worms. Okay. Computer worms are just like viruses. Uh, but the only difference is, uh, you see, in contrast to viruses, which require the spreading of an infected host file, worms can, stand alone software and do not require a host program or human help to propagate. They can propagate themselves. Okay, and this can be any kind of worm. We have got worms that uh, take information from your computer. We have got even worms that uh, take your files and decrypt them. Okay, ransomware. They tell you either you pay this much of money or you don't have access to your resources, to your files. Now, if it's my small computer with my files, I'm not. It's not important. I can, wash out my PC, reformat everything, and start from scratch. I'm not paying. But if you're an enterprise consisting of millions of lines of data in your database, okay, and people suddenly don't have access to that, then they would say, okay, just pay the person. Let's let's just pay the person and get access to our data. Okay, and this has been done many times. Why do you think the people are running that ransomware? Okay, engineering it and sending it to these companies so that they can earn money illegally. Okay. We also have Trojan horses. You know the Greek legend that, I think there was a movie, Troy, if you watch that movie. Uh, you can, what they did was they put a big wooden horse, and I don't remember the details. Uh, the Greeks, I think, they were fighting with the Trojans this war, and they tried. They were fighting for a long time, and neither side won. So what the Greeks did was, I think, uh, yeah, what they did was they made their ships disappear so that the Trojans think that they have left, and they left a big wooden horse, a huge wooden horse. And then the Trojans came out and, you know, looked at this, and they thought, okay, we have won the war. These people have gone off, and they have left this big wooden horse as a trophy for us, telling us, okay, you have won this war. We tried to get in, but we couldn't. So they pulled this huge uh, horse, with wheels. They pulled it inside the castle. And as they were doing that, they didn't realize that inside this horse, there were the Greeks hiding. And at night, when they were celebrating, they were uh, drinking and celebrating, these Greeks came out of that Trojan horse and attacked and killed everybody and won the war. Okay, so that's why there is a proverb in English. It says, "Beware of Greeks bearing gifts." It's just I mean, anybody who's suspicious who bears a gift could be a Trojan horse. So a software that in front it appears very helpful and useful, but behind it's doing something malicious. Okay, so you have to be very careful with this, because there's so many softwares online that promise they do this, it's free, just download, but you never know what they do. Okay, so you have to be careful with this. Maybe they get information about which are the websites you have been, what are the keystrokes that you have typed on your keyboard. Okay, uh, just imagine if you're accessing a bank through your computer with your username and password. Okay, so you have to be very careful with these things, my dear students. Even as a single user at home, okay, you have to be very careful, because we have got all kinds of software in the form of viruses, worms, and Trojan horses, and you have to ensure that you take care. Yes, G, and 5G, um, many people, especially in the West, they were saying that 5G causes harm. It it makes you sick and all that stuff. But we don't know how true it is. Okay. Um, we also have reconnaissance attacks. Okay. So in addition to malicious code, it is also possible for networks to fall prey to various network attacks. Network attacks can be classified into three major categories. Uh, yes, we have got reconnaissance attacks, access attacks, and denial of service. Okay. Reconnaissance, when these attacks happens, the discovery and mapping of systems, services, or vulnerabilities. The threat actor will try to find out loopholes in your systems. Access attacks uh, will try to, unauthorized manipulation of data, system access, or user privileges. Change whatever you have access to without anybody knowing about it. Denial of service, access a website, give so much, send so much request to a web server that it crashes. Okay, that is disabling corruption of network systems or services, flooded with requests that it crashes. So all these, the external threat actors, they use tools, software tools, okay, to get information. This morning, actually, tools like NSLOOKUP and WHOIS, okay, WHOIS used to get information from, user databases and all that. NSLOOKUP gets information about what is your DNS server and what is your exchange. This morning, I showed the students in the morning a sample of that. Okay. So let's do an NS lookup. Then my default server is cdns01v6.tm.net.my. This is my DNS server. And there is the address. You can see it's an IP version 6 address. Okay. Now, just, I can say, I want to find out, for example, let's go to Google's set type is equal to MX. MX as in the mail exchange server for www.google.com. Okay. Okay. So this is the primary name server, NSL. This is the primary DNS server, nsl.google.com. And the mail server is dnsadmin.google.com. Okay, getting information like that. Now let's just stop here. Let's not proceed. Okay. So you can get information, a lot of information from this. Okay, about different enterprises. You can get information, and once you get information like that, you can actually, if you can persist and find out more by using these network tools, and if you want, you can do damage, my dear students. Okay. Access attacks are another ones that can bring down your network. They exploit known vulnerabilities in the network, okay, especially in authentication services, FTP services, web services, so that they can access your accounts, confidential databases, and any other sensitive information, like information about pay in an enterprise, who is getting how much pay, which is one of the top secret, guarded secret in an enterprise. Any company you go to, the HR tells you, do not share your pay details with anyone else. It's very confidential. And if you do, it will be against their policy. Okay. So access attacks can be password attacks. Okay. By using brute force, trying to guess, using a software that, tries to guess all the uh, kinds of password, the millions of capable passwords that can be enforced, okay, by using a Trojan horse, by using a packet sniffer, okay, packet sniffer which tries to um, find out what data is being transferred, okay. Another one is trust exploitation. What happens is a threat actor uses unauthorized privilege to gain access to a system and possibly compromising the target. Now, you have seen this in the movies, people using other people's accounts and trying to access or manipulating a person or even, drugging the person and accessing their accounts. Port redirection. A threat actor uses a compromised system as a base for attacks against other targets. Okay? So a threat actor, as it says in the example, using SSH port 22, okay, to connect to a compromised host A. So host A is trusted by host B, and therefore the threat actor can use telnet on port 23 to access it. So host B, okay, thinks that they can trust host A, but they don't know that it's actually a threat actor who's accessing the data. Another one, this is very interesting, is man in the middle. In this situation, the threat actor is positioned in between two legitimate entities. That means he will try to appear to be the person that the first entity is trying to access. The first entity thinks the threat actor is the second entity. The second entity thinks that the threat actor is the first entity. Okay. And then the threat actor can modify the data and change what is being exchanged between both the parties. Okay. We can see some of the those Mission Impossible movies to get some idea of what they do. But I'd rather you watch documentaries. Okay, you watch documentaries. You understand why this is so important. Security is so important. Okay. Yeah, sorry. 0 Days. This is another documentary. If you can watch, it's very interesting. Okay, it gives perspective about what you can do with code. Okay, uh, there are so many other documentaries. I had a lineup of all these documentaries in my last semester's chapter when I was talking about the same thing. So if you can watch the video, okay, watch the video relating to mm, last semesters as well. Okay, okay, and then we also have yeah. Yes, let's go into denial of service attacks. These are the most publicized form of attack and among the most difficult to eliminate. Okay. However, because of the ease of implementation and potentially significant damage, denial of service attacks deserve special attention. Okay. So these actually come in many forms. Uh, you send so many requests to an entity, especially a server, that it stops uh, delivering requests to legitimate entities. So the whole idea is you feed it with so much of uh, requests or so much of uh, data that they cannot serve everybody. Okay, and they prevent authorized people from using their services. Why? Because you're consuming all their resources. Okay. So you have to ensure that you have the latest security updates on your server to make sure that this does not happen. Denial of service attacks are actually a major risk because they can interrupt your communication, can bring down your your server, and it can affect. Uh, you have to patch up. It takes a lot of time, and during that time, you're losing money. If you're an e-commerce website, okay. So you also have a DDoS attack, okay. Uh, but in DDoS attack, what happens is it's just like a denial of service attack, but it originates from multiple coordinated sources, okay. It's like a threat actor will build a network of infected hosts known as zombies, okay. And these zombies, we call them as special software in the form of botnet, okay. So using this combination, okay, they use a command and control program to instruct the botnet of zombies to carry out your uh, distributed denial of service attack. So you have to ensure that you have got the latest patches, even with the latest patches, um, because if a server gets bogged down with too many requests, even legitimate ones, it is crashed. Many times people will say that, there were so many orders that my server crashed. Now, those were uh, legitimate entities doing the valid purchase or so on. But you can also bring down a service. Doesn't matter whichever part of the world, you can bring down a service by using a coordinated distributed denial of service attack, okay, or even a normal denial of service attack. And it is surprisingly simple to do so. Now, let's go and study how we can uh, mitigate, we can reduce these attacks as network engineers. So in order to mitigate, we have to organize our network, okay? We have to organize it into a proper layers so that it's secure, okay? We have to use several security devices and services, and some of these are given over here. We have to use VPN, okay? We have to use a firewall, okay? We have to use an IPS. We have to use a proper ESA, WSA, that is your email security appliance and web security appliance. And we should always use a server which incorporates AAA, authentication, authorization, and accounting. Okay, as a system administrator, remember all these things: authentication, authorization, who can access what, and have an audit on everything that the user does. Okay, make sure the password setting is a policy that follows a strict password, and if a proper password is not given, uh, the system won't accept it. Make sure that only authorized people can install software on the computer, on the workstation, all around your enterprise. And whoever is doing what, make sure that you have a audit of that person, which websites they're visiting, what YouTube videos they're watching, which how long they're accessing Facebook, what are they, you should have, it looks like you're spying on a person, but at the same time, you're also protecting your network. As a network administrator engineer, you're not spying to get that information out. and to blackmail the person, or to tell the person that to humiliate that person, but rather you're protecting your network. Okay, because sometimes when people go to suspect websites, they don't know better. What happens is they download a silly software which infects and brings down the whole network. Okay, so you have to ensure that this does not happen. And the moment you see something is wrong with regard to one employee who is doing something which is dangerous, you immediately go to your CEO, your boss, and you say, hey, this person is doing this. And I find if something goes wrong, don't blame me. And then the HR will immediately email that person and say, explain yourself. And if there is valid reasons, they may even fire that person and terminate their services. Okay. That's why it's very important for you. Not that you're spying on people, you're protecting your network. That's why you have to do accounting. You have to know what's going on. Okay. On each person's computer, so that you're protected. Because when you are working on a workstation, okay, in an enterprise, that workstation is not your property. It's a property of the uh, enterprise, and you as a network administrator have to ensure that network is up, because at the end of the day, when the network is down, people cannot access their services, uh, money is being wasted, okay, time is being wasted, and the blame goes only to one person, which is you as the network engineer. And it's not a good feeling when that happens. Okay, you will be labeled as incompetent, you'll be labeled as useless, you'll be compared to other people. Others network is good, why our network? So that's why it's a very bad feeling. You have to ensure you do not suffer that humiliation as a network engineer. Okay, so you have to ensure you do these. Okay, it's a very rewarding career, but at the same time, it's very tense at the same time. Okay, so uh, think about all these things, my dear students. Look at this picture that they are giving us. Okay, they have got a firewall, they've got a VPN, they've got the intrusion prevention system. The server that they have is, a triple A server. Okay, they have got their layer 2 switches connected to layer 3 switches and so on. Okay, so having a kind of system like that. Actually, when you do your CCNA 2 and 3, you will learn more about this. Okay, at this juncture, you should know that, you should have some awareness. Keeping backups is very important. Okay, you should know how frequently you should do your backup. Where do you store your backup? Do you store it on your enterprise, or do you store it in the cloud? Okay. Uh, what about the security of your backups on the cloud? Is it guaranteed? Okay. Um, your backup should have strong passwords so others cannot access them. Okay. So all these information, it will fall under your purview as the network engineer. If there is a new malware, uh, you know, as 0 day, as I told you, that means it is new, and antivirus companies even don't have time to find a solution to these threats. Okay, and even there are not enough patches by your software, so you have to ensure that, because new viruses are out every now and then, my dear students. That's why I told you, uh, watch this documentary, and you will learn so many things. Okay, you will see the engineers who actually create this antivirus. In our field, we have to listen to these professionals, listen to them talk. Okay, very interesting. And there are so many other documentaries that you can see like that related to security. Watch another one, AFK, away from away from keyboard, AFK. Yeah, uh, that's also an interesting documentary. So you have to ensure that your system is always up to date. Your system is has been updated. Why? Because these software systems, especially if you're having Linux system or a Windows system, uh, they always check for patches. Okay, and that's what you're installing and protecting your system from being attacked. Okay, so if I go, for example, to my Windows update settings, okay, there you can see last check was yesterday at 6:21 p.m. Okay, so yeah, it's optional quality update available, which no, I don't think I'm going to go for that. Okay, so ensure that you update your Windows. If there is critical update, they will let you know, and you can even choose the time. In your Linux also, it's the same thing. It's important to go for a system that you've got a proper authentication, authorization, and accounting, as we call AAA. It will allow you to give a strong password. Okay, uh, it will allow you to give authorization to which workstation can do what, depending on that person. Okay. For example, in my line, I am in IT and computing. I need to install software on my uh, computer, on my workstation. So they give me that permission. But at the same time, they make me sign a document that if something goes wrong, I am liable for the damages. Okay, so I have to be responsible for what I'm downloading and installing. Okay, I cannot just install suspect software and bring down the whole network. Okay, so this kind of authorization has to be given. And which website do people visit? Okay, you cannot use a person's you cannot go to an enterprise and use their network and do something illegitimate. You cannot go to websites that are suspect, that are uh, indecent. Okay, so once you find people in your enterprise doing that, it is, as a network engineer, it is your duty to report and say that, hey, this person has been visiting this every day. Even on the weekends, I see him coming to work and doing this. Is that okay? Report. And then the CEO says it, calls the HR and say, hey, we have a problem. And then they discipline that person. Okay, so you have to ensure that you do your job properly. Okay, so network firewalls reside between two or more networks. Okay, and even in packet tracer you can play around with that. Okay, and I've shown you once how to set a firewall, and you can even deny ICMP messages with your firewall. Once you have a firewall, nobody can ping you. If everything is okay, still nobody can ping you. Okay, you can have a firewall between yourself, that is your network, and the outside world. Okay, now you can give a special permission in this firewall that only certain sites can be accessed. Okay, you can also deny certain aspect, or even the whole internet you can deny. Okay, even a whole country can stop the internet access of its citizens. They can do that if they want. Now you will see something over here, a DMZ server. Okay, a demilitarized zone. So a firewall could allow outside users to access specific services. Okay, if you have got a proper authentication, you can access special services. Okay, now these services, we put it in a special place, like access to Moodle. We call it demilitarized zone. We put a server over there. So the DMZ enables network administrator to apply specific policies for hosts connected to that network. The inside network, the policy will be different. But the DMZ, the policy will be different. Why? Because we need people to access it from within and from without. Okay, from outside. So you have to do all this as the network administrator and lay out the blueprint as well. So there's different kinds of firewall. We have got packet filtering firewall. Okay. Um, a very nice software we have in that is, but it works, yeah, packet fence. It's an amazing software, but you have to, it works only on Linux system. Okay. It's an amazing software that ensures that certain websites you cannot go to, certain features of applications like videos, uh, uh, audio calls and all that you cannot run. Okay, amazing software, packet fence. Okay, you can check it out if you're a network administrator. Packet filtering prevents or allows access on IP or MAC addresses. You see, on IP or MAC addresses. Okay, application filtering prevents or allows access by specific application. URL filtering prevents or allows access to certain websites that you don't want your, you don't want your people in your enterprise to access any torrent websites. Okay, so put that in your filter. The moment they type it, they cannot go there. Okay. Also, stateful packet inspections. So incoming packets must be legitimate responses to requests from internal hosts. If there is any unsolicited packets that do not belong, they are immediately blocked. Okay. So this is another way you can deny, you can stop your denial of service attacks. You can also ensure that you have endpoint security. That is the security on your host. Okay. An individual's workstation. You have to ensure that their computer, because you cannot stop people from using their pen drive on the computer to store data. Okay, so you have to ensure that uh, you have a centralized uh, antivirus security, and this centralized antivirus security is implied on every is employed on every workstation. Okay, and it's not the easy job to do. Which software you have to pick, which antivirus software you have to pick, is always it's not easy because there's always a testing period, and um, but once you uh, choose one and employ it, then things would be easy. You should have a proper policies, and these policies should be told to any person who is new in the enterprise. If they've hired a new person, you have to make them know that what are your IT policies, okay, and what they can do and what they cannot do. You should also have device security. So you have to ensure that uh, whatever operating system you have, okay, you should ensure that the security is very secure. For Cisco routers, as they say over here, uh, the Cisco Auto Secure feature can be used to assist securing the system. And then there are certain tests Default usernames and passwords should be changed immediately. Access to system resources should be restricted to only the individuals that are authorized. Any unnecessary service and applications should be turned off. And often, devices shipped from the manufacturer have been sitting in a warehouse for a long period of time and do not have the most up-to-date patches. So you have to update them. Okay. With regards to passwords, now this is, it may appear something silly, but actually it's not, because using brute force, you can actually crack passwords. Make sure that your password length is at least 8 characters. Make passwords complex. Make sure that you repeat uh, the update. For example, what I mean is you ensure that they change the password once in every 3 months or once in every 1 month if you want strict security. But if you do that every 1 month, then you'll be a very unpopular network administrator. Everybody will hate you. 3 months makes more sense. Because after 3 months, then you can update your password again. Okay. And if you have changed to a new password, make sure that it's not a recent password. Okay. Uh, you should have a mixture. Okay. It shouldn't be common dictionary words. Have a proper mixture of characters, numbers, okay, cases, and so on. Yeah, they're giving you a tip. Oh my God, people are teaching you how to give password. Look at this. Change passwords often, okay? And do not write passwords down and leave them in obvious places, okay? As you know that we are going into biometrics, we have implemented this on our phone using our fingerprints and using our facial construct and using our iris recognition. We can open our phones. And very soon we're going to bring that to our workstations as well. It's just a matter of time. So there are certain uh, things that you can do on your router to ensure that uh, your passwords remain secret. Okay, so one is ensuring that your service password encryption. Okay, so that others cannot see, even if they see your password, it is encrypted. You can set a minimum acceptable password length with security password minimum length. Okay, you can also give a login block over here. So like here, login block for 120. Uh, over here, you can say 120 seconds if there is 3 attempts within 60 seconds. So if there are 3 attempts, which is wrong attempt to access the router within 60 seconds, do not allow them to access the router for 120. Okay, so it's going to block for 120 seconds. Okay. If you are trying to access a network device, make sure that you access it through SSH. Okay. Because SSH is encrypted. Okay. Um, Verify or create a local database entry, authenticate against the local database, enable VTY inbound SSH sessions. Okay. If we go to our packet tracer, if I get a PC in here, and let's say switch, okay. Now, you know that you can access your switch over here straight from the command line interface, but usually in the lab, what we do is we use a console cable. We connect to our COM port and to the console cable of the switch. Okay, and then in the PC, we go to our terminal software, okay, and make the connection. Bits per second, 9600, data bits 8, and then make the connection, and we access our switch from here. Okay, there you can see, press return, there, you get your switch. Okay, enable, okay, conf t. Okay, so you can access your switch. Right now, you're accessing your switch from your PC. Now, the thing is, accessing this, okay, is not encrypted. Okay, so what they are asking you to do, that you have to ensure that you, okay, have a secure connection, SSH session. Okay, and that is one of the first, if you look at one of the first labs that you did, where you gave a SSH password, okay. So in those sessions, you ensure that everything, if you're accessing through here, everything is encrypted, because you could be, if you look over here, uh, you could be accessing it through the network, not through the console cable, and you could be somewhere on the whole network. And if somebody is using a sniffer, they can find out what you're typing. So, but if it's encrypted, okay, if you're using SSH, then perhaps it would be not so easy to do that because it's encrypted. Okay, so enable VTY inbound SSH sessions. Cisco routers and switches start with a list of active services that may or may not be required in your network. Okay, so whichever service is not required, disable. Okay, so that threat actors do not exploit that. Okay, like CPU cycles, RAM, inside the RAM, the features that you don't use. Okay, an example they're giving you, for example, iOS XE, that is the Internet Networking Operating System, will have only the HTTPS and DHCP ports. Okay, so you can verify this by giving this command. iOS versions prior to iOS XE use the show control plane host open ports command. So those ports you can close, so others cannot access those ports, okay, on your internet networking devices. So this brings us to the end of this session. Do you have any questions? Anyone? Okay.